What sort of government tools do we have to help out, to get those guys help they need?
Right. Yeah. And I think one of the tools that the government has historically excelled at providing is funding. And we've seen a lot of that being pushed into the marketplace over the course of the past year. Through the CARES Act, some of the earlier legislation that was adopted to provide funding to address some of the issues with the pandemic, as well as the American Rescue Plan that was adopted earlier this year, that created a couple of key funds to address the homework gap. One of which was the $7.2 billion emergency connectivity fund, which was run through the FCC. Has been targeted to school districts to meet those kind of connectivity needs in their community. We actually just got some news last week after the first funding window closed. Only $5.1 billion were asked for out of that. So the FCC is going to be opening another funding window to see what the need is after that funding is used. So that again is kind of on the deployment side of the equation. What kind of gear do we need to get into the field to be able to meet these connectivity needs? The other piece of the American Rescue Plan was more targeted at the affordability piece of the equation, which is the emergency broadband benefit, $50 a month discount on connectivity, as well as some support for devices in the home. We've seen over the course of the past few months, as that program has been stood up, millions of Americans taking advantage of that. And that's just the ones that are kind of more targeted towards that. There have been funding through NTIA, for tribal broadband, for communities of color, HBCUs, community colleges to take advantage of that, as well as generalized infrastructure funding through the Department of Treasury. We're just seeing all sorts of funding programs pop up to address this critical gap that we're seeing.
Yeah, you just expanded my thinking a little bit there, because when we started this conversation, I was thinking of my own son, right? I was thinking of middle school, right. High school, right. Elementary school, and that's easy for us to think about. It's because all parents, that's what we're thinking about. But then as the kids get older, they're going to go off to community colleges, universities. So this is bigger than just high school, isn't it? It's bigger than
it's bigger than high school or my kids who are in elementary school. It's bigger than all of them, and yeah. It really is. And it kind of goes back to what, we're talking about the homework gap here, but that really is, it's a critical piece of this gap. But, you think about seniors who are trying to age in place and their access to telehealth, farmers who are trying to utilize precision agriculture. The government is trying to look at this holistically. And while we see tranches of funding dedicated to particular verticals here, really we may talk about this a little bit later, but this is all even happening in the context of a massive $1 trillion plus infrastructure bill, which also has broadband funding in it as well. So the last word has not been written on what the government is trying to do here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're kind of expanding my thinking a little bit here too, because it's often been said that internet is a utility. It's like electricity and water. You really can't live without it. And then you mentioned some applications like farmers. Those are infrastructure, and so yeah, it makes sense that it's part of the infrastructure bill. So what? And I know the infrastructure bill is tied up in Congress right now. It hasn't been passed or signed into law yet. But what are some of the numbers that are in that particular bill?
Sure. So at a high level, it's over $1 trillion bill that is really a comprehensive look at what our infrastructure needs as a nation are. Now, in this podcast, we're talking about connectivity, so let's zoom in on that one a little bit. We're talking overall a spend of about $65 billion on connectivity writ large, and the biggest chunk of that is to address the deployment gap to areas that don't have 25 by 3 broadband today. We're going to try to get that to 100 by 20 broadband or better. And Congress is, at least in the bill that passed the Senate, is allocating $42 billion to address that gap, to get broadband to every home in the United States.
Something we should be paying attention to then.